Week 14 did not disappoint. We had some of the best games of football we have seen all year. I was truly surprised by that. And we're going to get into a bunch of topics. The Bryce Young experience, the Vikings dominating the Falcons. But starting off, we are discussing the highest scoring game of the year between the LA Rams and the Buffalo Bills. And Josh Allen and the Bills fell short in this one. Their defense got gouged to the tune of 44 points. And Josh Allen, despite his best efforts, could not keep up offensively. And this game to me felt like one of those classic 2022-2023 carry jobs from Allen. 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns. He's the only quarterback in NFL history to do that in a game. Got let down by his defense, got let down by his running game, got let down by his special teams, but still played at a very high level. Got let down by his coach. McDermott should not have called that quarterback sneak. You throw a pass down there near the goal line. Maybe if Josh Allen wants to run, you let him decide that himself instead of trying to have a tight end shove him through 3 defensive linemen. But very enjoyable game to watch. Stafford played at an incredibly high level. Kyren Williams really chewed up the clock. Effective, efficient runner on the ground. Blake Corum got 8 carries this week. Good stuff from him. And Puka Nacua had a superstar level game. Very enjoyable product. I see why it helped Josh Allen's MVP case, because even in a loss, this was a spectacular game.
The Rams scoring 44 points is not surprising when you have Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams, all those big players on their offense playing at a high level. The Bills scoring 42 points with Josh Allen and the supporting cast he has this year. That's not surprising. I think the most disappointing thing for one of these fan bases from this game was the Bills defense. They've been playing very solidly up to this point, and the Rams offense just ran them up and down the field. It gives you a little bit of a pause when it comes to the Bills making a deep playoff push, playing a different elite offense. I know the Chiefs offense isn't elite right now, but in the playoffs in Arrowhead, does that give this Bills defense some problems?
There's a very real chance Andy Reid has not broken out a solid 50% of his playbook and is just saving it for the playoffs. So I am a little bit worried about the Chiefs offense come December, January.
And the Ravens, if they play the Bills in the playoffs, does this Bills defense keep giving up touchdown after touchdown after touchdown? Hopefully Justin Tucker doesn't rear his head in that potential matchup. But I think if you're a Bills fan, you're disappointed because the defense did not look good and Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp lit you up. You're obviously excited about Josh Allen's performance. I mean, 6 total touchdown contributions. He's going to be the MVP this year. He looks like he is the best quarterback in the NFL this year. And you also, unfortunately, lost any realistic chance at the 1 seed unless the Chiefs completely collapse. But
you never know. The devil magic has got to backfire eventually. We'll talk about that later. Something I do want to touch on, mention briefly. People are upset Josh Allen's MVP odds improved this week. Saquon Barkley did not have a particularly special game against the Carolina Panthers. Lamar was inactive. And people are saying, oh, well, Lamar drops in the odds when he loses games, but Josh Allen is rising when he loses games. How does that make sense? 1, Lamar's not dropping 6 touchdowns and 400 yards when he loses these games. The most points Lamar has scored in a loss this year is 24. Josh Allen pretty much entirely, with the help of Khalil Shakir, of course, scored 42 on the Rams. You are comparing apples to oranges. This is a great performance from Allen. I really don't understand why people are upset he is moving up the ladder in the MVP race.
He was atop the ladder to begin with entering this game. I haven't really seen people be that upset with it. But if you are upset with Josh Allen leading the MVP race, it doesn't make much sense because his defense was the reason he lost this game. This Bills team was losing the entirety of the game, and throw after throw, run after run, he made big plays, converted third downs, fit throws into tight windows to Khalil Shakir. Amari Cooper had a solid game. He used all of his different weapons. The run game got going. He was bringing this team back play after play, drive after drive. At no point in this game were the Bills in control of things or leading. The defense kept giving him a bad hand, and he made it work. Almost won at the end of the game. So it doesn't make any sense if people are actually upset about it.
Yeah, I don't really know if the run game got going. Non-Buffalo Bills named Josh Allen had 7 total carries yesterday, so he got the run game going. He was the run game.
Exactly.
The run game in and of itself not going so much. But they're upset because Lamar's going to lose the MVP. I'm upset because Sam Darnold's going to lose the MVP. 5 touchdowns, perfect passer rating, dominated the Atlanta Falcons. So I kind of thought it was a trap game. I thought Kirk could come into this game, recapture a little bit of his old Minnesota magic, and really just take it to Brian Flores' defense. I thought it'd be close, and for a while it was. Then Addison and Jefferson got loose. Then Sam Darnold aired that sucker out, and then members of the Falcons secondary looked like they forgot to play football spontaneously while the ball was in the air. Special performance from Sam Darnold in the second half and the fourth quarter, giving the Vikings yet another win. They looked very impressive offensively. Defensively, only one sack against Kirk Cousins. He threw a lot of bad interceptions and a lot of balls into the ground because he did not want to get sacked. He is clearly nervous about that prospect. The Vikings are a legitimate contender. With how the Eagles played this week against the Panthers, how injured the Lions are, I would not be shocked if they made a run in the playoffs. Obviously, you've got questions about Darnold, about Aaron Jones, if he can hold up for an entire playoff run, if the defense can remain successful against one of those quarterbacks like Stafford or Goff, who really stands up to the blitz well. But this is clearly one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the NFC and deserves a whole lot more respect, much like Kevin O'Connell deserves respect and should be the coach of the year.
If we're looking at this season just in a vacuum and aren't taking into account the team's playoff history over recent years, what they've done in the past, what the team's best players in 2024 have done in the past, there is no reason the Vikings shouldn't be one of the favorites to make it to the Super Bowl at the very least. Because when you look at what they're able to do through the air, they have a quarterback that is more than willing to push the ball down the field. Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, clearly one of the best receiver duos as they've really progressed through this season. And the only reason I think fans, the media, are kind of putting a pause on their commentary of the Vikings or their optimism is the fact that they're not leading their division. Unfortunately for them, the Detroit Lions are atop their division. But when you look deeper at it, they were very close to beating the Lions. So I think people having reservations due to that is flawed in certain ways. And people, of course, they're probably wondering, when will the other shoe drop when it comes to Sam Darnold? Will he return to what he looked like every season of his career prior to this season? And I think if you just evaluate this Vikings team on what they've accomplished in 2024, they're one of the best teams in the NFL. They're just as good as the Lions. They're just as good as the Eagles and some of the other top dogs in the AFC. I think the only thing to their game specifically is maybe they don't have the best run game compared to some other top dogs, but they're really good.
Their run game fluctuates week to week. Aaron Jones has had some bad fumbling issues the previous 2. It's what kept him close with Arizona, kept them close with Tennessee. He's got to be better at that. I think he will be. We saw him rise in the playoffs against the Cowboys and the 49ers last year, despite having a rough spat in the middle of the season with the Packers. I got faith in him. He's a playoff riser. As for the other shoe dropping, I mean, are we going to bash Sam Darnold if he has a bad playoff game or has a bad game towards the end of the regular season, which costs the Vikings a chance to compete for the division and say, oh, look, he's back. We knew it was a fraud this entire time. At this point, the body of work in Minnesota seems to be outweighing the body of work everywhere else, when everywhere else in particular was a completely incompetent, mismanaged system with little to no help around it. So I think Sam Darnold's just a pretty good quarterback. Maybe being his talents accentuated by the KOC offense, which is why KOC should win Coach of the Year. But come on now. He's a good player.
And I think the Vikings, I don't know what the contract will look like after this season, but I think if they move off of him, it will be a major mistake. I've seen it floated. Now, I haven't seen this widely floated out there, but we all know they added Daniel Jones to the quarterback room. And I've seen it floated out there that they should let Sam Darnold walk because they have J.J. McCarthy waiting in the wings, and then J.J. McCarthy and Daniel Jones can battle it for the... That's the most ridiculous take. I wish I could cite who said that,
imagine a New York quarterback struggling in his career, getting free from an incompetent organization and going to Minnesota and succeeding. That never happened, right? The Vikings should not pay Sam Darnold in excess of $30 million a year. If they can get him for that or less, fine, pay him, extend him for a few more years. McCarthy's the future. He's the 9th overall pick. There's a reason Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi drafted him. If they don't have faith in him, if they extend Darnold for $45 million, that is a bad sign for JJ. Obviously, meniscus is a little bit concerning, but you've got to take that chance. We're going to talk about the Vikings forever if we don't say with us.
Well,
let's talk about Kirk a second. Let's talk about the former Vikings.
I was just going to say, on the other hand, though, to put a bow on that, in advocacy for Sam Darnold, is J.J. McCarthy is the youngest quarterback in the NFL. Sam Darnold, I think he's only 26 or 27.
27, same age as Daniel Jones.
So if you even were to sign him to a 3-year deal, then J.J. McCarthy's, 24? If Sam Darnold starts every single year and even waiting in the wings learning from KOC. So I don't even think that would be the worst scenario.
If you've got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. as a wise man once said. Speaking of that, the Atlanta Falcons also played in this game. Not a special performance from our pal Kirk Cousins. Had 2 interceptions, should have had 3. That immaculate catch by Drake London where Shaq Griffin had the ball in 2 hands, but for some reason they gave it to London. Not his best performance. Better than last week, but not much. Didn't take too many sacks. Looked uncomfortable in the pocket. Relying heavily on the run game to keep this game close up until the 4th quarter, at which point Kirk just kind of shut down when full pump came out and the Vikings offense really took off. I'd give him one more game. Give him one more game against a worse defense. If he just can't pull it back out, if he's still throwing up these water balloons, then I think you give Penix a shot. But at this point, you're then talking about, have the Falcons gone too deep in on Kirk Cousins? Are they paying him too much? Is it worth it to move off? Were they always planning to bench Penix for the entire year? It's a bunch of awkward conversations, not actually related to the on-the-field product. And off that, the coaches in Atlanta are around Michael Penix every day in practice. Well, if he's just legitimately worse than this version of Kirk Cousins, then they're really in trouble.
Well, they paid a lot of guaranteed money to Kirk Cousins to be their starting quarterback, so they want him to work in some respects, they need him to work, and it feels like they really wanted Michael Penix to sit for a year. But when it comes to what we've seen over recent weeks and how we expected this game to go, it kind of went exactly how we expected it to look. Kirk Cousins still completely immobile, threw a pair of interceptions, did not look anything close to good. And this Falcons team, they still have a chance to compete for the division. If they tie with the Buccaneers, they have the head-to-head tiebreaker. And is Kirk Cousins getting there? I don't think so. A couple weeks ago, had a comfortable division lead. Now, they're in 2nd place in the division. So I think Kirk doesn't really have a chance at reviving this team and leading them to an NFC South title. And I think Michael Penix, at that point, your first-round quarterback, is your best chance at making that a reality.
In defense of Kirk, his last 3 games were against the Broncos at Mile High Stadium, against the Chargers, and now against the Vikings. Those are 3 top 5 defenses, certainly 3 top 10 defenses. Next week, he gets a shot at the Raiders. I think you have Penix ready to go in that game, but give Kirk one more shot. The rest of their schedule, I'm looking at here, it's the Raiders, the Giants, the Commanders, and the Panthers. All those are against weak defenses. Maybe you view the Panthers a little bit more highly, given what they've done in recent weeks, and think they can snap Kirk Cousins up a little bit. But I'd give him a shot against one more bad team.
With the way the Panthers have been playing, I'd say they're better than the current state of the Falcons with Kirk throwing passes.
Well, the way the Panthers have been playing, what teams aren't they better than? Besides, of course, the ones they keep finding a way to lose to. And I'm going to transition here. I'm going to hold some feet to the fire. The Bryce Young trade halfway through last season, even halfway through this season, was being called one of the worst trades ever. Bryce Young was getting absolutely cooked because he couldn't make it work. They did not give him the benefit of the doubt. They did not wait for him to get weapons around him, get an O-line from him, get a coach who was accustomed to Young's talents, his skill set, used to what he could do to call plays for Young to succeed. No, they completely dismissed him for a player who at the time was still in college, struggling mightily in college, I might add, and who now he's in the NFL, turns out it's not really a trip through Candyland. I never want to hear that again. This trade may not have been great for the Panthers. It was not that bad from what we've seen so far from Caleb Williams. The right tackle they took with the 10th overall pick that year has not been special this season. DJ Moore, under contract, had his own set of issues, might be checked out mentally on the season. And Caleb Williams, the past 3 or 4 games, has not been special. He was not special early in the year. Then you look at Bryce Young. He's not why the Panthers are losing games now. He's keeping them in games. He near single-handedly led a 97-yard game-winning drive against one of the 3 best teams in the NFL on the road, which would have ended in a touchdown if Xavier Legette did not drop a ball which hit him in the hands. That is a disappointing moment from Legette, but the talent is clearly on display for Young. When they roll him out, when they do emotion stuff, when they put him under center, as long as they're not leaving him back in the pocket, which he is not comfortable in, he is playing at an incredibly high level, particularly when you look at what's around him. Bryce Young was the correct pick that year. C.J. Stroud would not succeed in this Panthers system last season, and I never again want to hear the little man in Carolina slandered. No more.
When it comes down to the trade compensation specifically, I think you're always going to laugh a little bit at the trade because you have a team that's looking to draft the future of their franchise, which Bryce Young may as well be now as far as the good we've seen from him in recent weeks. But you make that trade. He looks terrible. I think they traded up from the 9th pick to the 1st overall pick, and then he plays so bad, the team that traded with you gets the 1st overall pick the next season. So I don't think it's ever going to be called a great trade, Now, Bryce Young looks like he can be a very high-quality starter in the NFL. He's been elevating the Panthers over recent weeks, but I don't even think it's fair to directly compare this version of Bryce Young to what we've seen from Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is a rookie. We've seen Bryce Young go through some major growing pains. He looked really bad his rookie season, looked really bad before he got benched this year. And Caleb Williams, he started the year with not the best head coaching situation. That proved to not be good as the season progressed. Had some really rough games, has had some really good and solid games, solid passing performances. He's shown athletic ability, and I just don't think it's fair to make the direct comparison to Caleb Williams now versus Bryce Young right now.
Yeah, and it wasn't fair to call Bryce Young a bust 8 games into his career in a much worse system. I'm not calling Caleb Williams a bust. I'm not saying Bryce Young is guaranteed to have a better career than him, but it's pretty clear Young has been better, at least in his second stint as a starter, than Caleb Williams has been this season. And I just wanted a little bit of intellectual consistency and some apologies from the people who were so quick to dismiss Bryce Young, yet seem to be coddling Caleb Williams for some reason. Williams has had 2 or 3 good games. Other than that, he has stunk. Bryce Young, kind of the same way, had 2 or 3 good games his rookie season. Other than that, stunk, but in a much worse system with a coach who also got fired in the middle of the year, with a worse offensive line, with a worse supporting cast around him, with a worse defense backing him up, and people were still just absolutely trashing him. I am upset by that. Could Caleb Williams and Young be fine? I am sure they will both be great. They were first overall pick quarterbacks. Those do not bust entirely all that much anymore. But there's clearly some intellectual inconsistency from certain members of the media, certain people on Twitter, X, YouTube, MySpace, WhatsApp, no more.
I think a big reason that Bryce Young got so heavily criticized during his rookie season and why you see people write him off extremely quickly had a lot to do with people were already acknowledging he wasn't maybe the best athlete. He was an average athlete coming into the NFL. His biggest strength was his ability to process defenses, get balls out on time, make accurate throws. That's what we saw him do in college. And in his rookie year, he just wasn't doing that. He looked completely flustered by the speed of the NFL. His anticipation and accuracy that made him the #1 overall pick wasn't there. Before he got benched this year, the accuracy wasn't really there. And I think we've seen him regain a lot of that, but because of the question marks about his height, his overall athleticism compared to guys like the CJ Stroud or Josh Allen or, more high-end like physical attributes, I think that's why we saw so many people doubt Bryce Young because of the nature of how people think about shorter quarterbacks.
It's also kind of funny, and this isn't a dig at you or anything, that was the same about Stroud. He was a better athlete than Young out of college. I think it's pretty clear Young has been a better scrambler than CJ Stroud this year. He is actually really good at rolling out either way, creating stuff with his legs, getting out of a dirty pocket, getting under defensive linemen, at least in the second stint of a starter. And Stroud just hasn't been that. I'm sure part of that is on his offensive line, not giving him running lanes out of a dirty pocket. But that's another amusing thing to look at. Briefly touching on the Bears, their game specifically, 38-13, blown out by a really injured 49ers team. San Francisco still has a little bit of life, a small chance to win the NFC West with the Cardinals waning. But this tells me more. The Bears, they didn't get the interim head coach boost. They already had their staff shakeup in the middle of the season, and they do not travel well at all. Their next trip to Minnesota on Monday night probably is not going to go too well for them.
I agree. I think the interim head coaching boost that we normally see for teams didn't happen because, as you mentioned, the staff shakeup already happened. They had booted out Shane Waldron. They promoted Thomas Brown. That gave them a boost on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to scoring points. And when you get rid of Matt Eberflus, when it comes down to poor late game or situational decision making, you had Thomas Brown then step in, where he's now calling plays and making all of the head coaching decisions. So there wasn't exactly a major shakeup that happened. And you're playing a 49ers team that has a lot of continuity at the coaching position and from an organizational perspective there. And they're playing to still win the NFC West.
Some coaches, like Kevin O'Connell, can handle the head coaching responsibility and offensive play calling duties. The dude who got fired as the Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator last season, I probably could have told you he can't. That would not have been a wild and scorching hot take. Boy, I love me some Chiefs devil magic. This week, it was not as bad. Obviously, you've got the false starting right tackle, which I'm going to complain about every week. Shout out to Juwan Taylor. The DOINk field goal, which really should have been an easy make, but I digress. The Chiefs are the best team inside of 2 minutes in football history. That is their one unique talent. They grind games out if they are remotely close. They will get a stop, put together a drive, and you'll either get the ball back with 30 seconds left or less, or you just won't get it back and they'll kick a game winner. That is what this Chiefs team is great at, and that is an invaluable skill to have. Eventually, I think they're going to get their doors blown off by a better team than them. I think a game like the Raiders game happens, like the Broncos game happens, where they don't get the lucky break in special teams or with a snap, and someone who really shouldn't beat them beats them. But here we are. They're probably going to be the 1 seed in the AFC unless they stumble mightily down the stretch to a team like the Steelers. Against the Broncos at Mile High Stadium, there's also a chance, but they're probably going to have home field advantage for the entirety of the playoff run. Looking at the Chargers, very competitive game from them. Good fight. Their defense, very good. Their offense strolling at points, but they got their receivers outside of Ladd McConkey involved, which is a good sign if they're going to make a run. They need someone besides him to really step up and make some plays, whether it be the tight end or Quentin Johnston. Gus Edwards, it's hard to run on the Chiefs.
Will Dissly also got injured.
Well, that does not help. How badly is that?
I do not know, but I'm pretty sure he left the game.
We will consult the injury reports and throw up a graphic.
When it comes to the Chargers, I think a big reason why they lost is the Chargers have a very good defense. The Chiefs have a lot of talent across their front seven. We knew these teams had solid defenses. I think everyone kind of expected this to be a pretty low-scoring game from what we've seen from the Chiefs this year and the Chargers missing some offensive talent. And I think it just comes down to the Chargers do not have as much offensive talent as the Chiefs do. Both are very well-coached teams. So in those key big moments, the Chiefs just had a little bit more talent on the offensive side of the ball to squeak this game out.
I don't even know it's offensive talent per se. I mean, how do we consider the offensive line? I guess that is talent, but the interior of the Chiefs' O-line is what really helped them drag this one out. The Chargers were getting absolutely fried, particularly wherever Chris Jones lined up, primarily over the Chargers' right guard. The O-line is what got the Chiefs this one. They were able to grind it out over the middle and give Mahomes longer in a pocket. When the edges collapse, he can still kind of step up and either have a lane or have a more comfortable pass with nobody in his face. I would push back on that being talent per se, just because how we designate offensive linemen, they deserve their own shout out, because when you say talent, you're thinking skill players, wide receivers, so on and so forth. Chiefs are going to be a hard team to beat in the playoffs, but I really do think somebody can beat them.
If someone beats them, it's going to be because of their offensive tackle play, because there were a lot of times during that game where you just saw, whether it be a DB, Bosa, any of the Chargers passers are just flying off the edge, destroying their offensive tackles.
I mean, Bosa and Mack are hard for any team to block, particularly if you've got Juwan Taylor out there. God, who was the dude they picked up this year because the rookie there?
Wanya Morris was, I believe, playing in that game.
Wanya Morris is currently the Chiefs' left tackle. I believe he was the gentleman who started the Super Bowl for them against the Buccaneers. Oh, fun memories from that, but I remain optimistic. The devil magic will eventually run out. Them losing or winning on a DOINk, I mean, that field goal should have been made anyway. That's not the most egregious piece of devil magic, but something will eventually go against them. I am sure of it. I hope it's in the Super Bowl against the Vikings.
Everyone has said that every year.
Hey, it's just building up. Eventually, they're going to get popped by it. Finally, Seahawks, Cardinals. We were woefully mistaken on this one. No shame in admitting that.
I was wrong too.
Credit to the Cardinals. They tried a bit longer to get James Conner involved in this game before they gave up on that and just had Kyler Murray air it out, but Seahawks defense appears to be legit. Their offense, despite the putrid right side of their offensive line, has been playing better. That gets the running game going. Even without Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet really stepped up, had one of the best games of his career, shout out to Michigan man Zach Charbonnet, and did everything in his power to keep the chains moving for Seattle. Arizona had no answer. Their defense look shell-shocked. They've clearly taken a few steps back from that hot stretch they went on, and I think this game is going to be able to keep them out of the playoffs.
If the Cardinals specifically, I've been on a roller coaster with them all season long. At the beginning, I kind of wanted to jump off of their bandwagon because they had some losses where you were given big pause. Then they had a couple of big wins where you're like, oh, this team can be really good. They're getting Trey McBride. They're getting Marvin Harrison Jr. going. This defense looks really good. And now they just rip off a 3-game losing streak where you have Kyler Murray making some big mistakes. So I don't know what we're going to get from the Cardinals. They're probably, I think, the most inconsistent team in the NFL, but they're consistently inconsistent. So does that mean they're consistent?
It means they're going to have a good next few games here. Again, I told you, they have like 2 to 3 game stretches, and you didn't believe, oh, that's no. You got to trust me on this one, man. I pay attention to these things. Looking at it, the Seahawks' remaining schedule, they play the Packers at home, they play the Vikings at home, they play the Bears on the road, which Soldier Field Bears is very different from Road Bears, and they play the Rams in the season finale for what very well could be for the division title. I think they match up well against the Vikings. The only advantage Minnesota has is if they can get a lot of pressure on Geno Smith, and if they have Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet back for that. Both those guys are pretty good at pass blocking as running backs, which will help them out a lot. It's what kind of helped Atlanta only sustain 1 sack as Bijan was back there fighting for his life against blitzers. That could be a win. The Packers, they kind of feel a little fraudulent. They keep losing to all the best teams in the NFC. It wouldn't shock me if they went on the road and lost to Seattle. And the Rams just scored 44 points and beat the Bills. So hard to say how their season is going to go, but I'm definitely looking at them a little bit different. I'm going to pick them to beat the Packers this week.
They're making me want to believe in them, certainly, over that massive losing streak they went on. I lost any faith in Geno Smith, JSN, DK Metcalf to really get things going on that offense. Now, after winning 4 games in a row, being atop the NFC West, I have a lot more faith in them. JSN has really emerged as one of the best receivers, top 15 guys in the NFL. He's certainly become the #1 receiver in this offense, although DK Metcalf has been banged up with injuries this season, so that may be taken a little bit into account. And this backfield, when Kenneth Walker's on the field, he's phenomenal. Unfortunately, he gets hurt a lot, but when he's been hurt, Zach Charbonnet has stepped up in big ways in these games where I think in this game he had 5 catches, 50-something yards, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards rushing. So they have a very good backfield. They have the weapons on offense. Their defense, when it's been healthy, Mike McDonald has been getting this defense going as the season has progressed. So they can make some noise. I don't think a lot of teams necessarily want to play them, but I think it'll be we say this with a lot of teams. It'll be interesting how the rest of their season plays out.
Aside from the winner of the NFC South, who wants to play anybody in the playoffs this year? The NFC's good.
That has been our Week 14 reaction. So let us know your biggest takeaways. If you want to check out Underdog, use code Thicc. Gives you bonus cash up to $1,000. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.